It is March 31st, 2014, a tavern in Kaapmuiden, Mpumalanga. The story starts off sounding like a bad joke, but unfortunately, this is not a joke. This is murder. So, 3 men drink together. One of them is a police officer. Another is Xolani Brown Lubisi, 38 years old. They're just out for drinks with what he thinks are friends. They get into Lubisi's car. The cop sits in the back seat. They drive towards Nelspruit on the N4. Then from behind, the officer draws his service pistol and shoots Lubisi in the back of the head. The man sworn to protect and serve murders his drinking companion, dumps his body on the roadside and speeds off in the dead man's car. This is the story of Saeed Sipho Dlamini, a Belfast police officer who took a life, lied to cover his tracks, and thought his badge would save him. It didn't. This is Brick and Blood. Kaapmuiden sits on the confluence of the Kaap and Crocodile rivers in Mpumalanga. The name means Cape Mouth, the place where the Kaap River opens into the Crocodile. It's a small farming town just off the N4 highway between Nelspruit and Mozambique. The kind of place you drive through without really noticing. There's a painted silo visible from the road, old tin-roofed houses lining the main street, sugarcane fields stretching in every direction, subtropical fruit farms, vegetable plots. The town began as a railway junction back when the Netherlands South African Railway Company was connecting Pretoria to Delagoa Bay. Now it's mostly known for being close to the Kruger National Park and having a good butcher, if you know where to look. In 2014, Kaapmuiden had taverns like any small town in South Africa. Places where locals gathered after work, where friends met for drinks, where strangers became acquaintances over cold beer and conversation. March the 31st, 2014, a Monday night. 3 men found themselves at one of these taverns. Saeed Sipho Dlamini was 38 years old. He was a police officer stationed at Belfast Police Station, about 100 kilometers west. Seiko Xolani Mate was there too, and Xolani Brown Lubisi, also 38, a local man with his own vehicle. We don't know how they knew each other. Were they old friends, acquaintances? Had they just met that night? What we do know is that they drank together. Alcohol flowed, conversations happened. At some point, someone suggested they continue the night elsewhere. Lubisi had his car, so they could drive to Nelspruit, which is about 30 kilometers west on the N4. They left the tavern together. Lubisi got behind the wheel of his own vehicle. Mate climbed in. Dlamini sat in the back seat, directly behind the driver, behind his friend, behind a man who trusted him enough to get into a car together. They drove onto the N4 heading toward Nelspruit. The road was dark. Traffic moved fast on that highway. Inside the car, maybe they were still talking, still laughing, still enjoying whatever camaraderie had developed over drinks. Then Dlamini drew his service pistol, the gun issued to him as a police officer, the weapon he was supposed to use to protect citizens. He pointed it at the back of Xolani Lubisi's head and pulled the trigger. One shot, instant death. Lubisi slumped forward, blood everywhere. The car veered. When it stopped, Mate was sitting next to a corpse, a police officer holding a smoking gun in the back seat. Dlamini gave orders, remove the body from the driver's seat, put it in the back. Mate, terrified, complied. What choice did he have? Refuse a cop who just murdered someone? Become the next victim? Dlamini climbed into the driver's seat, his friend's blood soaking the upholstery, and took control of Lubisi's vehicle. He drove, not away from the scene, deeper into it. He continued along the N4 towards Magododorp past Nelspruit, taking the dead man's car as if it had always belonged to him. Somewhere near Gondwana, Dlamini pulled over. He ordered Mate out. Take the body, remove it from the vehicle, and while you're at it, search the pockets. Take everything. Money, phone, whatever Lubisi had on him. Mate did what he was told. He pulled Xolani Lubisi's corpse from the back seat and dumped it on the side of the N4. He went through the dead man's pockets, removing whatever small possessions marked this person as human. Dlamini collected the stolen items. Then they drove away fast. Dlamini behind the wheel of a murdered man's car, blood on his clothes, stolen property in his possession, his service weapon recently fired. Mate beside him, accomplice by terror. But Dlamini was driving erratically, too fast. Near Waterval Boven, a police officer on patrol noticed the speeding vehicle. He tried to pull it over, but the car didn't stop. The officer called for backup. Eventually, other units cornered the vehicle and forced it to stop. When they inspected the car, they found bloodstains, lots of them, on the seats, on the steering wheel. The officers asked about it. What happened? Why is there blood everywhere? But Dlamini had an answer ready. He produced his police identification card, that symbol of authority, of trustworthiness, of law and order. He told them the blood belonged to his child. They'd been a road accident. He was rushing to get help. A father desperate to save his injured child. It was a lie, a calculated, cold lie, designed to leverage his position as a fellow police officer, to trade on professional courtesy and shared identity as law enforcement. The officers arrested him anyway, not for murder, not yet, for drunk driving. They'd smelled the alcohol, seen the erratic driving, watched him fail to stop. But drunk driving led to questions. Questions led to investigation. Investigation led to the body near Gondwana. Forensic teams processed Dlamini's clothing. They found DNA, blood. It matched Xolani Brown Lubisi's. They processed the vehicle, more DNA, more blood, all matching the corpse on the side of the N4. They interviewed witnesses. The officer who'd stopped the car testified about Dlamini's behavior, his lies, his desperation. Lubisi's sister identified her brother and his vehicle. The post-mortem report confirmed the cause of death, a gunshot wound to the back of the head, execution style, from behind, while the victim was driving. Dlamini was charged with murder, robbery with aggravating circumstances, defeating the ends of justice, and drunk driving. Mate was charged as an accomplice. The trial moved forward slowly. South African courts, especially for serious crimes, take time. Evidence disclosure, expert testimony, witness preparation. For Dlamini and Mate, that meant sitting in custody or out on bail while prosecutors built an airtight case. Dlamini pleaded not guilty. He denied everything, despite the DNA, despite the witnesses, despite being caught driving the victim's car with the victim's blood all over him. He maintained innocence. State Prosecutor John Malwele led the case for the prosecution. He brought witness after witness. The officer who'd stopped the vehicle, Lubisi's sister who had to identify her brother's body and his car, the forensic experts who matched the DNA from Dlamini's clothes to Lubisi's blood, the pathologist who confirmed the gunshot wound to the back of the head that killed Lubisi instantly. The evidence was overwhelming. Dlamini had sat directly behind Lubisi in the car. His service pistol had fired the fatal shot. His clothes carried the victim's blood. He'd been caught driving the victim's vehicle. He'd lied about the blood to fellow officers. He'd ordered Mate to dump the body and rob it. Magistrate Gravenstein heard it all. She found the state's witness credible. She rejected Dlamini's version of events entirely. But here's what's interesting about the verdict. Mate was acquitted. The magistrate found that he acted under duress. He'd followed Dlamini's instructions because he was terrified. If he'd refused, he believed reasonably that he'd be the next one shot. A civilian sitting next to an armed cop who just murdered someone? What choice did he really have? The court recognized that terror. Mate walked free. Dlamini didn't. The magistrate described the murder as premeditated, brutal, and senseless. She noted that Dlamini had shown no regard for human life. This wasn't a split-second decision. This wasn't self-defense or heat of passion. This was a police officer who drank with the man, got into that man's car, sat behind him, drew his service weapon, and executed him. October 2024, over 10 years after the murder, Saeed Sipho Dlamini stood for sentencing at Nelspruit Regional Court. Life imprisonment for murder, 15 years for robbery with aggravating circumstances, 5 years for defeating the ends of justice, 1 year for drunk driving. The sentences would run concurrently, meaning life imprisonment was the effective sentence. But the judge wanted each crime acknowledged separately. Dlamini was declared unfit to possess a firearm forever. His driver's license was suspended for 12 months. The magistrate ordered his house searched for any firearms or ammunition he might still have. The Independent Police Investigative Directorate, the IPID, the agency which is responsible for investigating police crimes, welcomed the sentence. Spokesperson Falari Shuping commended the investigators and prosecutor for their outstanding diligence and commitment in ensuring that a law enforcement officer found on the wrong side of the law is held accountable for his actions. That phrase, found on the wrong side of the law, as if Dlamini had simply wandered across some invisible line by accident. He didn't cross a line, he shattered it. He took the authority given to him to protect people and used it to murder someone, to rob them and then lie about it. Small town taverns are supposed to be safe spaces, places where locals gather without fear. The presence of a police officer should make people feel safer, not put them in mortal danger. But Dlamini turned that assumption into a weapon. His badge, his gun, his authority, all tools of murder. The 10-year gap between the crime and sentencing shows how slowly justice moves in South Africa. Lubisi died in 2014. His family waited a decade for closure. For 10 years, they lived with the knowledge that a cop had murdered their brother, their son, and was still fighting the charges. That's not unusual in South African courts. Backlogs, delays, appeals, justice deferred becomes justice that barely feels like justice at all. And think about Mate, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, forced to become an accomplice to murder because refusing might have meant his own death. The court recognized this terror and acquitted him, but he still had to live with what he saw, what he was forced to do. There's no sentence for him, but also no way to unsee Dlamini pulling that trigger. Xolani Brown Lubisi went out for drinks and never came home. His sister had to identify his body. His family had to wait 10 years for the man who killed him to finally be sentenced. That's not just about one murder. That's about what happens when people sworn to protect us become the threat. Police brutality isn't always beating protesters or shooting suspects. Sometimes it's a cop sitting in your back seat, drawing his service weapon and executing you while you drive. Sometimes it's an officer using his badge to lie about why there's blood in the car. Sometimes it's the institution moving so slowly that families wait a decade for justice. Dlamini's life sentence matters because it sends a message. Badges don't grant immunity. Guns issued for protection can't be used for murder without consequences. But that message took 10 years to deliver. 10 years of Lubisi's family living with incomplete justice. 10 years of Dlamini living free or on bail while they grieve. The sentence is right, the delay was wrong. And Xolani Brown Lubisi is still dead, killed by a man who should have kept him safe. Saeed Sipho Dlamini is serving life in prison. Psycho Xolani Mate was acquitted and walks free, carrying the trauma of that night. Xolani Brown Lubisi's family finally has closure a decade later. The N4 still runs past Kaapmuiden, past Godwana, where the body was dumped, past the spot where a traffic officer noticed something wrong and started the investigation that eventually brought justice. Small towns remember these things. Taverns in Kaapmuiden still serve drinks, but some people probably think twice about who they share a car with. If this story stayed with you, please share it. Subscribe to Brick and Blood on YouTube and follow us on your podcast platform. Hit the like button, leave a comment, tell us which South African town we should cover next. These stories matter and your attention keeps them alive. Thank you for listening. Walk softly, listen deeply, and remember, every wall has a story.